Thanks everyone, and thank you for this audience. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate. There's a lot of people, some faces I know, but a lot of people I don't. So I hope this talk will be of interest to you. And today we're going to talk for the second time about observability. But if you're not sure what observability means, we're basically going to talk about that kind of screen and how to avoid them easily. But before diving into the matter, just a very quick. The other one. This one? Ah, okay. All right. Not. I would have said the opposite. Yes. Okay. Very quick word about me. So, as the MC mentioned, I'm Mathieu Lamiot. I'm VP of Engineering at Group One, where I manage all our WordPress ecosystem and products. So, you might have heard about WP Media, WP Rocket, Rank Math, WP One. Those are the products that I lead the engineering teams for. You can contact me on my website, on LinkedIn, or by email, or after this talk if you have any questions or if you want to keep the discussion going. But let's dive into the matter. So what I want to do today is really bring to you 3 use cases and 3 tools for you to take the first steps in observability. And it's really hands-on. I will try to provide you tools that you can use and apply easily in the upcoming days, actually, so that you can get started with all those ideas. So first thing, we'll talk about moving out of the debug.log, of the loggings from WordPress, and how we can move to an error monitoring platform and what are the benefits. We'll look into what I call data-based alerting, a bit more about this with some tools and examples as well. And finally, first steps into automated visual regression testing. And we'll try to save some time for Q&A, but otherwise we can take the talk outside of this room after the end. Let's go. All right. So when I joined the WordPress ecosystem, I had previous experience in fintech where we were dealing with money, right? So every transaction, every interaction from the user, we needed to know exactly what happened. If something goes wrong, we need to know exactly where the money is, where it was sent, and so on. And when I joined the WordPress ecosystem, one of my first tasks was, okay, how can I replicate all the good observability we had back then in fintech into WordPress? And I had a very hard time finding tools. So one of the first things I did is installing a website, playing a bit with it, and I think we've all experienced this, in the early days when we were playing with WordPress, bam, there has been a fatal error on this website. The first time you see this, you panic, right? You don't know what it means, you don't know how to deal with it, so you go on Google, and some guy tell you, all right, you just have to add WP debug log, those things somewhere, whatever that means, and you will get information in debug.log. So you try to do that, okay, you try to figure it out. Maybe you get it working, and then you start coding a bit more, and at some point you have the error again. You don't know why, so you start doing this. You start putting error logs everywhere, every line. Hello, I'm here. Data initiated. Toto 1, Toto 2, Toto 3. Just to have a sense of where the code is executing. Who does that? Here, yeah. No shaming. I think a lot of people do that. That's fine. That's a good way to get started. And if you're lucky, well, you will manage to get something out of this, right? You will go into your debug log. You'll see a first few lines. You're not sure what it means. Text domain just in time. Admin bar could not init. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, OK. Hello, I'm here. Data initiated. Toto 1, Toto 2. OK. Here. OK. You find your logs. You know where you are. You're in control. So far, so good. That's probably working on your local website, or if you have a very low traffic website, you can go this way. That's fine. But then at some point, you'll try the same thing on a high traffic website, and all of a sudden this is a very different story. You start to see, hello, I'm here. Okay, data initiated, so far so good. Oh, hello, I'm here again. That's weird, right? It shouldn't be in that order. Toto 1 again, Toto 2, Toto 1, 3, 3. Wow, it doesn't make sense anymore. You're having multiple requests all in the same debug log. There's no way you can figure out anything out of this, right? And this is often how this works in production websites with a lot of traffic. So that's something, we have the information, but it's not structured in a way that you can use. What we would want to do with this is maybe being able to group those logs by request. For example, to be able to know, okay, this Toto 2 belongs to this Toto 1, which belongs to this LOM here, right? To pack them by request. Also, something we would want to do is, hey, I've I've never seen this PHP notice function load text domain just in time, blah, blah, blah. Is that happening often? How often do I see this, right? From a long log text log file, you cannot really tell. So we would like to be able to group those things together. And out of those grouping, we would like some data. And we would like, of course, not to have to look into this text file every day, but to be alerted when something goes wrong, and not to have to every morning to open the file and say, okay, is the website still working as expected? So what we would like to have is something like this, an interface where all errors are grouped together, where you can see, for example, for the last 7 days, for example, you have a graph. This error had happened every day, always at 6 a.m. This one is happening, a bit all the time. So already we can start having some information. And if I click on one of them, I would like to have details about, okay, where is the error happening? Exactly what's the error? Where is it happening in the code? There's an error with data resource ID. What is data? What is resource? Those are variables. What were the values of those variables there? You could do all this with error logs, of course, but you would have to investigate to adjust your log every time to, oh, I forgot to log this specific variable, let me add it, and you try again and so on. We would like to get all of this out of the box. What I'm presenting here, it's the interface of the first tool that I want to mention, which is Sentry. So as you can see, it gathers a lot of information. What it does is it's a tool that allows you to aggregate all your errors, warnings, logs together and do some processing automatically so that you get to understand the frequency of each error. You get to understand maybe the origin, right? This error, we see it's happening quite frequently without any specific pattern. This one, as we saw, it's every day at 6 a.m. So maybe you have like an asynchronous task running at that time, right? So just out of this, you can already find patterns. And of course, you can prioritize. This happened 600 times for the past 7 days, this just 3 or 4. So maybe those errors, you can just put them aside for now. It doesn't seem that big of a deal. And of course, you want to deep dive. When you click into one of those issues, you want to be able to see where it happened in the code. And sorry, this is not PHP, this is Python, but you can get the concept, I guess. Okay, key error here, data resource. What are those values, right? We can see that data is a JSON blob there, and resource is order. Yes, there's no order in this data, so maybe, and we can see from the data that there's a status 404 from WooCommerce. So maybe out of this already we can see, yes, I didn't handle a 404 case, right? So out of this, you already have the answer. You don't have to add logs manually anymore. So all of this is Sentry. So it works with you need two things to make that happen. The first thing is the client side, so what you have on your website that will actually send all the events. The good thing with WordPress is that we have this guy, Stay Alive, or Alex Bouma. If you know him, please introduce me to him. I would really like to thank him because he did a great job. There's a plugin. You just install it on your website, and it takes care of sending all those events warning to a server. So it's super easy to integrate. And then all you need is then the server side, so the place to actually collect and visualize the data. So you can use Sentry. They do have a free tier, which I use for my personal website. For small website, it's totally fine. If you want, they have paid tiers, but you can also use GlitchTip, which is the open source equivalent. So if you really want an open source solution, you can have GlitchTip. It works almost exactly the same with the exact same plugin. So it's really easy to use as well. And you just have to install that, and you have everything I've shown out of the box. So this is really a first tool that you can start using, to proactively, be aware of what's going on without having to add your logs and then revert them manually every time you face an error. So that's great. We have a way to identify warnings, errors out of the box and to be alerted about them. And when we have this, we feel like, okay, I'm covered. All the errors, I'll be aware of, about them. I don't need to do anything else. We are only getting alerted about what happens and goes wrong, about errors. So something goes wrong in the code, there's an error, you'll be alerted thanks to Sentry. But there's a lot of other issues that can happen. Stuff that should happen, but does not happen. Let me give you a couple of examples. You are an e-commerce website, and all of the sudden your number of orders, of completed orders, or checkout pages, it just drops. Maybe you have updated a plugin or a theme and your checkout button doesn't work anymore. It just clicks, nothing happens. There's no errors, no code is executed, no errors. Sentry won't see anything. But still, you have a big problem. You don't get orders in your e-commerce website anymore. If you have a blog and you want people to subscribe to your newsletter, for example, same thing. If your newsletter button doesn't work, there won't be any errors, maybe, but the point is you won't get those subscriptions. So we also need a way somehow to monitor this, because this is not error related. The way to do that is to actually use your data. If you're using WordPress, you do have a database where everything that's registered on your website is stored. So this is where you have a lot of information. For example, if you're using WooCommerce, all the orders that actually happen are stored in your database somewhere. If you have a website with logged in users, all those users are registered in that database as well. So you can use that. Here, this is an example that we actually used in my company. We were investigating slowdowns on one of our websites. We were not sure where it was coming from, but the website from time to time was slow. And at some point, someone plotted this graph out of the database. It's just the number of new users per day. So you can see usually we have a pattern during the week, and of course during the weekends we have much less users. This is a usual pattern. All of a sudden, number of users, new users per day went from 700 to almost 1,500. Marketing people will be like, yay, a lot of new users, that's great. That doesn't happen like that. That was a DDoS attack. People, trying to register a lot of users to slow down the database, and that's how we were able to spot it, just plotting this graph, right? So that's good. But then we did that manually, right? Someone had to think, hey, let me check that, and we saw the issue. We would like to be alerted automatically when something like this happens. This is where database alerting comes in. The idea is to say, once a day, once every hour, every week, whatever, you want to run a query. Here, the query is number of registered users in the last 24 hours. And if the user count, so the result of that query, is not between 300 and 800, so that would be like the maximum and minimum that you usually see, then you want to get an email or a Slack message or a Teams message, whatever, to say, hey, something's weird, right? Maybe it's okay for one day. If it keeps going for the second day, you really have something to look into. And that's what you can use Metabase for. So Metabase, this is this tool, this open source tool that I will be demonstrating now. Okay. So it gives you access to all your databases and tables, and you can browse them through this UI. You see all the rows, all the columns, but through a no-code editor, you can pack them by timestamp, for example. So that would be number of logins per month since forever. Let's make that by day. A bit too much data, so let's make that just for the last 30 days. And this way, you get a nice graph where you can actually see, without coding anything, number of logins. If you're more advanced, you can also access the related SQL query and modify it yourself, right? If you want to do more advanced stuff, but you also have a lot of no-code editing going on there. And you could say, okay, I have less than 10 logins every day, so let's put a goal line at 10. So it will show there. And let's tell Metabase, hey, if any day, the line goes above 10, then send me a message, send me an alert, because something's not going as expected. So you can do all that thanks to Metabase, and it's connected either through emails or Slack. You can check every day, every hour. You can configure all this depending on your need, and send that directly to your company Slack or whatever tool that you're using. So this is also an open source tool that you can install, you can download from metabase.com. They do have a self-hosted solution, but they also, which is completely free and open source. They also have, of course, a premium tiers where they host everything, but all that we're using is the free open source solution, and it gets the job done completely. And it comes also with nice addition. As I showed, there's a full no-code editor. So if you're working with teams, with marketing teams or non-technical teams that also need to access, for example, to, hey, how many orders did we do last month? How much money did we bring thanks to the sales? You can also give them those tools because they don't need to write SQL to get the data out of the database. So that can also be a nice way to make your data accessible to everyone in your company. And it has a lot in capabilities, as I demonstrated, and you can get stuff like this on Slack. So this is a real example. This alert is about number of failed orders on our WooCommerce website for WP Rocket compared to the previous days. So if someday we have payment issues or something like that, we would get alerted that the number of failed payments is higher than expected. And all of a sudden, someone can investigate. Even if we haven't been looking at the logs all day, we are alerted when something goes wrong. And that's another example I wanted to have because we experienced that very recently. We updated WooCommerce on one of our e-commerce websites last year. It was working well. We didn't see any issues, so we keep using that in production. What we didn't realize is that through that update, they enabled a new payment method, which is called Stripe Link. So this is something built on top of Stripe that allows people to pay through their phone number, which is great, right, from a user experience perspective. The issue that we had is that we do have a custom payment and renewal system. So we do have custom code going on this website. And we do have actions, very long name like WC Rocket, schedule, renewal, next payment, _ Stripe at the end. And we have the same for PayPal. The issue is that we are calling do action with the exact same slug, but the end, Stripe or PayPal, is dynamically appended with last order get payment method. So all of a sudden, we were handling Stripe, PayPal, and all of a sudden, a third payment method has been introduced. So this code got executed, was calling actions _ Stripe link, but there were no action registers. So we never actually ran our renewal system here for those specific orders. Again, no errors. Everything's fine, right? There's no code to call, so there's no errors. But there was actually a big problem is that the orders were not processed as they should. We were able to spot it relatively quickly because we had somewhere a dashboard with number of orders per payment method on Metabase. And someone on one day went to that dashboard and said, hey, that's weird. There's a new line here appearing, this orange line at the bottom for Stripe Link. You say, oh, that's not expected. So that allowed us to see it. Otherwise, it would have been a silent problem probably for a while. Now what we have done, and you cannot see it because of the bottom line, but we did create an alert that checks every day what are the payment methods that we have seen for the previous day. And if we see a new one, an unexpected one, we would get alerted. It means, hey, something's unexpected going on. We would need to fix this code somehow. So this is a real life example from a few months ago that could have caused a lot of troubles. All right, so now we cover everything related to errors, we cover everything related to data. There's one final aspect that I think is really important, is the user experience and what people actually see, right? We've been talking about PHP code, errors, data, but there's also visual things, right? When your users, they come to your website, what do they see? Is that still as it should? And maybe there's no errors, maybe there's no warnings, there's no data issue, but maybe your homepage doesn't look like what it should because you updated a theme, a plugin, whatever. Something doesn't look as it should anymore. And well, you can also every morning open all of your websites. If you own an agency, you have 200 websites to go through every morning to make sure they look like what they should. This is very time consuming, and you probably don't do that. So you can try to automate this part. What is a visual regression test? To make a visual regression test, you need, well, to define a test, to define a URL. Okay, what page are you going to check? Screen size, you want to check your page, especially now with responsive websites, you need to check your page probably on a computer, a mobile, maybe a tablet, all the formats that you can think of. And well, of course, websites are not just pages, right? There are also interactions, like some specific buttons, maybe a menu or stuff like that. So there are specific actions you also want to make sure they react as they should from a visual perspective. So you define like a scenario. Okay, go to that page and click on that button. And then you want to take a snapshot of this, of the result of those actions. So you would know that as of today, this page looks like this. And you store that somewhere. And then you want, every time you do a change, every time you update a plugin, a theme, or whatever, or your WordPress version, you want to make sure that all those snapshots that you took, they are still, what's happening in production. You want to make sure this is still the case, and that there's not something that shifted slightly, or a menu that has become invisible, or things like that. So you want to automate those steps. So in this example, so I'm going to show you how you can actually do that and automate it. This is a very ugly slide. I've never managed to make it look better, but yeah, bear with me. And it's just to show that in one slide I was able to put all the steps you need to take, so it looks easy, right? Ugly, but easy. All you have to do is install this backstop.js. If you're not sure what this is, you just run those commands with npm, and you'll get backstop utility on your computer. And backstop init. Backstop init will create all the files that you need, and there's one that's very important, which is backstop.json, which is basically a huge JSON file in which you will explain all the tests you want to do, right? So all the URLs. So here I'm testing a sandbox.local slash blah, blah, blah. I want to test it with a tablet, and I can set the width and the height of the viewport. So you could do that with a mobile, with a computer, whatever. And in that JSON file, you can also list actions like click on this selector, click on that button, wait 5 seconds if there's a animation, for example. So you define your test. Then, once it's defined, you do backstop test. So backstop will just execute this. It will open a browser and visit those pages. And then you say backstop approve. It means, okay, whatever you saw, you consider this the reference from now on. Okay, so backstop will store that somewhere and say, okay, that's the reference I should check against. Next step in this demo is I just did a change. I changed the font size from 36 to 40 pixels in the H1 headers, just for the sake of the demonstration. And then you run again backstop test. So backstop will run again your scenario, visit that page, and it will compare what it sees now to what it saw before. And you'll get a report like this. So of course here I changed the size of the header. So in that example, I expect something to change. Up. Nope, sorry. Let's try again. Okay, so you get a report like this. You have multiple views, the divs, so everything in purple changed. You have here the reference and here the test. You can see switching that this size changes. And in the div, you can see that all those purple pixels are where things change. And you also have the scrubber, which allows you to before and after, right? So if you're not sure exactly what changed, it allows you to see that changing the header size also changed where the buttons were, so you can actually compare easily, all the changes before and after. So this tool allows you to effectively start automating your visual regression test, right? You could do that for all the pages or all the main pages of your websites, and with a regular task every morning or every week or whatsoever, you run this backstop test. If everything is fine, if nothing changed, backstop won't say anything. But if something changed, backstop will open reports like this for all the pages where there were some changes. So this can allow you, to automatically check that everything is in order and be alerted if something is not. All right. So we have seen 3 scenarios, 3 examples of issues and how to actually fix them using some easy tools. We used Sentry or Glitch Tip to move out of WP debug logs and to error monitoring platform. We use Metabase to get knowledge and alerts based on your actual database. And I introduced Backstop for everything related to visual regression testing. So the goal here is, of course, this is a journey, right? Those are tools and first steps. My goal here is really to introduce those tools so that you can see that they're easy to start with, so you can start using them maybe next week. you will see that it gets more complex, and there, you can always refine more cases and go deeper, but you can at least start to get an understanding of how that works and go as far as you need to cover your problems. So yeah. I hope that was useful for you and that you can take some knowledge out of this. Now I think we still have time for a few questions, and of course I will be available afterwards if you need to discuss anything or reach out on any of those social medias or emails. I'll be happy to keep going the discussion. Thank you.
Round of applause for Mathieu. Thank you so much. Very, very interesting. We have time for a couple of questions at least. Let's see how long they are. Questions. We have one here.
Hi. So the metabase, which you mentioned in the slides, that it can be used for someone who is not so technical in writing queries. So does metabase have like a automated query build available in the editor, or you have to like select from a drop down, like select the tables? Like
Yes. No, so there's nothing like an AI, for example, that would create for you all the things that you need to monitor. That could be a good feature for their roadmap, I guess. No, at the moment you have two ways of doing that. Either you, as I showed, you browse yourself through the tables and you click on the column, say, okay, filter by date and so on, right? You can edit this way. Or you go directly with SQL if you're fluent in SQL. But there's nothing that generates metrics out of the box for you. Yeah.
Another question here.
Maybe I missed something, but I cannot understand how to inject data to Metabase.
Yes, okay. So Metabase, you install it on a server or on your local machine. I didn't show it, but you have an admin setting panel, and you say add database. You need to reference like the IP or the host name, the username, the password, like all just like the WordPress, right? You need like those credentials, and that's it. That's it. Yeah. And then it will take like a few seconds to browse your database, and then it appears in the list of databases and tables, and you can start playing with that.
Very easy. Any other question for our guest? No? Okay. So thank you once more.
Thank you very much.
See you around.